Ellen and Lucy from the Plus program of University of Leeds. Are you here with us?
Hello. Yes.
Hi. How are you doing today?
Good, thank you.
Very well. How are you?
Pretty good. How do you have any slides to share with us?
Yes, I'll share my screen.
Awesome. Yep, we can see the screen.
Great.
Okay, so we'll make a start. My name's Ellen Rose, and I'm one of the lead officers of the Plus programme, which I will explain to you all soon. And I will just let my colleague Lucy introduce herself.
Hiya. Yep. So I'm also one of the officers in the Plus programme at the University of Leeds and work quite closely with Ellen on various projects.
Okay, you like to skip Lucy because I haven't got control of the slides, I don't think. Brilliant. So just before we go into talking more about the work that we've done more relevant to the conference, we just wanted to kind of describe to you what we do at Leeds and kind of why the platform that we've used has worked really well. So the Plus programme at the University of Leeds specifically focuses on on-course support for widening participation students. So any student that we deem as being underrepresented at the University of Leeds. And these can include lots of different students, care experience, students who are estranged from their family and are independent, those who have got caring responsibilities, students from areas of very low progression to university across the United Kingdom, and many, many more areas as well that we would deem to be WP. We support over 5,500 students of these students, and that's undergraduate and postgraduate. The majority are undergrad, though. I imagine it's nearer 5,000 probably are undergraduates. Unlike lots of universities, we do support students throughout the entirety of the student life cycle. So the application stage throughout to after they've graduated as well or want to pursue further study with us, we are supporting them. We do this from lots of different ways. We have bespoke opportunities, signposting to support and activities that are available to students. For very specific groups, we also offer one-on-one support, mentoring, and lots of different financial support options as well. And the key focuses of the work that we have, the key kind of strands are we look at the transition, the attainment of our students' retention, and then their progression onto where they want to go following their studies with us. Are you right to skip for me, Lucy? Perfect, thank you. So we weren't sure whether DIFA would be spoken about today, and we know it has been by a few people. So I'm not going to talk too much, but what we've used to support our students has been the DIFA platform, which you know the functionalities of now. So I will just skip on to the next slide if that's okay, Lucy. So what got us looking for an online support system for our students was because of COVID was the kind of the big instigator for us. What we do through the Plus programme is we run a separate induction programme to the rest of the university that's specifically for our students. And a large part of that is getting students onto campus and engaging in different activities and events that we do. But unfortunately, as many universities found, the pandemic did not allow that to happen. So from some of the feedback that we had from students during that time was that they really missed in-person activity and weren't able to meet people before starting university, which is one of the unique things that we're able to do through our work. And we also noted that there was a big gap between students starting university and when they get their A-level or college results before starting with us at Leeds. So the next steps for us was to look what can we do to support students, one during the COVID pandemic, and also to help bridge that gap between A-level results and actually being at Leeds. And it also complemented some other work that we've been doing, which was a transition month that links to our Access to Leeds programme, which is our widening participation route through admissions as well, which looks at lots of different avenues to support your transition from financial support, wellbeing support, and being an independent student as well. So following that month, we wanted to be able to add something so students can connect together before starting at Leeds. So why did we choose DIFA specifically? Well, colleagues across the university had been using it and found it very successful. In fact, a few colleagues that have been here today and have been mentioned throughout the session produced a paper, Online Chats and Chatbots to Enhance Mature Students' Engagement in Higher Education. And two of the writers of that report, we spoke to Eric and Jenny, and they had good things to say about Differ, and from conversations it sounded like it would work well, that what we were looking for, kind of an online portal where students could come together in a safe place, communicate with one another and make connections before starting at university. So key findings that came from the report that I read were that Differ is particularly appropriate to boost student engagement among non-standard student cohorts, and because our students are considered non-standard, underrepresented at university, this ticked a big box for us. 59% were actively engaged with Differ, which, as many of you are aware, we thought was a very good interaction with a service like this. And 78% indicated they felt confident they would be supported during their studies. And for us, that's really important because we want our students to engage with us and feel supported on the PLUS programme. And we particularly like the option of setting up different communities. So how we tackled it, which Lucy will talk about a lot more in more detail in a few minutes, it was that we could set it up to suit the courses or the different living areas that the students were going to be. And it also had the capability of one-to-one conversations and the chatbot value function, which was exciting. And as I've already mentioned, it did complement the transition month, where we got students together learning about what university would be like, moving on to having this chat function was something that we really wanted. So I'll hand over to Lucy now for a few slides.
Thank you, Ellen. So in terms of the practicalities of setting up Differ, so we worked with Lars and the Differ team to make sure we had this set up in time for the students to start. So in the UK, the students start around the end of September. All of our incoming first year students that we knew about were invited via text, but they also, we already had email communication with them, so we could explain what the text meant and provide instructions and a video explaining how they would access the app on their computer and on their mobile, and how to get started with it. So we launched it on the 7th of September. So it was about 3 weeks before the students actually started at Leeds, and many of them will have been moving from different parts of the UK as well to come to Leeds. One of the key things about this was that we employed current students, so they might have been in their second or third year, to facilitate the chats and answer questions from the new students, because we as staff didn't want to really be that present in the app. We wanted it to be very much student run and student led. So we have various faculties at the university, so we had at least one representative per faculty, and we had communities for all faculties, plus groups for students living in halls of residence, commuter students, so they are students who are staying in their family home, for example, and not actually moving to university, which is quite common in England. And an area for hobbies and interests, because we thought that that was an area where we could kind of do a bit of an experiment and see how conversations might develop in that area. So as Ellen mentioned, students were able to create group chats as well, and new topic areas within each community. We didn't really know how that would happen, to be honest, so it was quite interesting to see how it developed organically over the weeks that Differ was being used. And also having the facilitators meant that students could ask questions either in the public space, or they could send direct messages to the facilitators if they were worried about asking a question in sort of the public area, and they could provide peer support to each other as well. So in terms of these student facilitators, we made sure that they posted welcome messages to all of the new students in the community and topic areas. They provided some information about themselves and also tried to get the conversation going between the students. They were also asked to look out for any concerning messages from students, because something that we were worried about having this platform was that you know, students technically could write anything they wanted, or they might sometimes write something that was worrying. We didn't have any issues with this, but the facilitators knew what to look out for. And as I said, the students could also send direct messages to the facilitators in case they had a question that they didn't want to ask on the main community area. So you can just see some screenshots here of a couple of our facilitators giving examples of what they might have said to introduce themselves to the students. So I've got some screenshots here of various conversations to show examples of how students used Differ. So there's some examples of the facilitators or the host supporting new students, so providing information, answering questions, but also the students providing peer support to each other. So if someone had a question, another one of the new incoming students might try and answer it themselves, which created that sort of community feel and that sense that they were all there to help each other. Another example is new students creating group chats elsewhere. So the last presentation I know mentioned things like WhatsApp and other forms of chat, and obviously we know students will already use other methods. So we noticed some examples of these students suggesting to make a Snapchat group chat, for example, or a WhatsApp group chat, just because that is the typical, they're the typical platforms that students and especially sort of younger people might use. And then some example on the right was reassurance from a student host to a new student because they were worried that they had missed out on some events. So it helped that new student to feel less anxious and worried about beginning at Leeds because he had reassurance from a current student. And then this is just the hobbies and interests area. So you can see on the left-hand side, we didn't create any of these topic areas. These were created by the students. So for example, books, anime, music, sports, they were able to have discussions about these areas of interest, which don't really relate to their university course, but they are definitely things where students can find other people who have similar interests and therefore feel more of a sense of belonging when they come into Leeds. So in terms of the outcomes, we don't have as many sort of stats and things as maybe the other presentations because we are more, I guess, practitioners rather than researchers, but we will be doing more of an in-depth evaluation about this programme. So Lars kindly sent us some stats from their end in terms of how many users had accessed Differ. So we invited about 2,300 users and we had 683 users on board onto the app. And about half of them sent at least one message. So we can see there that some students were using it just to kind of read and stay in the background, and others were actually proactively using it. One of the interesting things was that over 1,000 group and one-to-one chats were created, which is really good to see because it shows that the students were using the platform to keep in touch with each other, even with outside of the main community areas. We did an evaluation with some of the students who use Differ. Unfortunately, not a lot of them responded to our survey, but of the ones that did, 86% of them said they would recommend Differ to new students starting in 2022 if we were to use it next year. And there's just some comments underneath there about the feedback we had. So students saying that Differ made them feel comfortable before starting university. They were able to talk privately with someone from their course. And also somebody pointing out that in some of the subject areas, not many people spoke, but then in some of the areas, more people were helpful and chatted. So it did vary quite a lot. And then just another thing that we thought was interesting from the evaluation, we definitely think that the use of Differ was more useful before the term had started in this case. So students thought that it was more useful before they had had the chance to get to Leeds and start their classes and meet their housemates and things like that. So if we were to use it in future, we would recommend to use it earlier on, just because of the way that our sort of results and confirmation of places system works in the UK, we think that we would launch it in August rather than in September. And there's just a comment there about somebody saying that it was a nice app to transition into when you were nervous about uni, because you don't know what kind of people you will meet. And they said, I am certain some people did make friends on Differ. So that was quite an interesting bit of feedback. So I'll just pass on to Ellen to finish off.
Yeah, so we just thought we'd pull together our main positives and areas that we'd like to kind of move forward with going forward. So the positives, the high numbers of group and one-to-one chats were made, which at the time we were really unsure of what was happening with that, because we could just sort of see the community walls and what was going on. So when Lars kindly sent us the data about what had been happening throughout our time of using it, we were really, really pleased to see so many one-to-one chats between the students, which is exactly what it was intended for, to get students talking and meeting before starting at university. As Lucy just demonstrated there, we got lots of positive feedback about our student host support, which was fantastic. The idea was that they were supposed to be encouraging and supporting students before coming to university, which was great that they were able to do that. As mentioned again earlier, 86% of the people who completed our survey would recommend it to future first years, which was just a great thing for us to see. And 85% felt they could ask any uni-related question in the space, which was brilliant, because it was supposed to be an open space that students could ask anything, either privately or through the community walls. And commuter students were very well supported. And at Leeds at the moment, commuter students are one of our key target groups that we're working with to make sure they feel as included as other groups who are kind of living on campus or much more easily accessible to the university. So we were very pleased that they felt they had a space where they could interact with us and make connections before starting. So a couple of areas that we would like to think about improving was some of the communities, as you can imagine, were more talkative and lively than others. There were barely any conversations between the groups. So we'd like to think again about how we could potentially get more conversations going, maybe try and enable different functions of Differ that we weren't able to kind of really look into as well, just because of the time of year and the quickness we had to put it all together, because that's probably something we should have added at the start, that we had to kind of pull to using Differ together very quickly. We discussed it, I think, with Lars in July, hoped to launch it in August, but it didn't end up happening until the beginning of September. So it was all quite pushed, and we, from our side, not Lars's at all, we had to kind of scramble to get things together. So yeah, there are things that in hindsight I think we'd like to try and implement next year. As we've mentioned several times, we want it launched earlier, because there's this gap at especially Leeds between getting college results, A-level results, and starting at Leeds. And I think that 3-week gap where we'd hope to launch it would make a big difference, because students are kind of waiting in anticipation of starting at university. And from speaking to some of the students, it was quite clear they would have liked it a little bit earlier. Increased number of students who are regularly engaging. So as much as we did have great kind of one-to-one chats, people commenting, the regularity of that wasn't as high as we'd like. So again, a bit more work we need to do at looking in how we could improve that. And, you know, again, mentioned already, but other ways we can utilise the app to get as much out of it as we possibly can. So these are our key areas, but, you know, overall, we're extremely pleased with how our first attempt's gone. We will be in the coming weeks writing a paper about our experience of using Differ, but as Lucy was saying, it's kind of come to an end, and we've hit Christmas and the new year, and we're still in the middle of a lot of our evaluations, so there could be much more to come. So if anyone's interested in reading our paper once it's done, you know, please drop us an email after, and we, you know, get in touch if you've got any other questions about the work that we undertook. But thank you for listening. And yeah, here's our contact information. Lucy and our emails directly, or the Plus Programme account, you can get hold of us as well. And if you want more information about the Plus Programme, our website link is there as well.
Awesome. Thank you very much for another great presentation. very useful for information for the audience, I believe, since it's a really a use case or a presentation about the use of differ in a real case scenario. Some comment from my side before we go into the two questions that we have from the audience. It's really interesting that you mentioned that it would have been better to start with the solution a bit earlier, like August instead of September. That's something we know actually for a few years already. That's not new knowledge we have. It's usually a practical problem with universities that very often either don't have the contact information of the students yet, or for whatever reasons, privacy issues, are not allowed to give them out before the semester starts and people sign up to the first time. So although from the research, we know that it would be much better to start earlier, August, July, very often it's sort of the practicality issues that prevent to do so, which might have been an issue here as well. So looking very much forward to seeing how we can solve this problem in the next round. But let's get into the question. There's the first question. Lucy, you said you would like to answer the question. I'm reading it out loud. I'm reminded of the Students' Room website giving its Plus program. Was the emphasis on supporting widening participation students, or was it more about general transition to university course?
Yeah, so I'm sure, sorry. I was just going to say, I'm sure Ellen will have comments too on this. But yeah, I suppose in this project, we were looking at sort of widening participation students, because that's the group that we work with on the Plus program. I suppose in a way the support covered general transition to university as well, because it was quite organic. We didn't know exactly what questions the students would ask or where the discussion would go. So I think a lot of it was sort of general practicality things like finding rooms, knowing where to find information online, and also just kind of general things like being worried about coming to Leeds, like worried about starting, trying to find new friends beforehand. So yeah, it kind of covered all, like a wide range of transition queries, I suppose.
Yeah, I completely agree, Lucy. And it was also about, giving the WP students kind of the platform to interact together around those transitional, key areas that Lucy mentioned, because we do find with our WP students, sometimes they aren't as forthcoming when they're in kind of bigger groups. So having this dedicated platform just for them for the Plus program was a way to hopefully kind of get that information to the students in a different way. Because there are other things the University of Leeds do, but this was specifically for the Plus program.
Great. We do have a second question from Eric. I'm reading it out loud first. Any conclusions or thoughts on usefulness of the Bo chatbot in Differ? How would you improve Bo for your users?
So as we kind of mentioned, didn't we, Lucy? Due to their kind of short turnaround for us, we didn't really get to use Bo too much, did we? So I'll let you say a bit more about this, Lucy.
Yeah, I think it was something that if we'd have had more time, we would have kind of wanted to explore more. I think Lars might have some comments as well, but I think we did explain what Bo was, because in the kind of home screen, you can, as a student using the app, you can click to get introduced to other students, and Bo is the facilitator of that. So I think some students did use that feature, but it wasn't used as much. And I don't know if maybe we didn't push it as much as we could have done. So maybe in future we would suggest kind of push it a bit more to the students as a way of meeting other students. I also think because we had such large groups, it was a bit harder, because if they'd have been put into group chats by Bo, they would have been quite a lot of students. So it might have felt a bit less personal, if you see what I mean. But I think it's definitely an area if we were to use it again, we would explore more.
Great. Yeah, again, very interesting to see, especially as a creator of a chatbot application, to see it in real life and how it's perceived by other people. Because as you can imagine, as a creator, you have a completely different perspective on things, especially how it works. So all the obstacles that might appear is really hard to see, and it's great to have so much research going on around our application to really unfold what's good and sort of highlight areas that we still need to improve a bit further. All right, is there anyone more questions? Let me look. No, it doesn't look like there will be any more questions. So I think we can conclude that talk. So thank you very much for sharing your experiences with Differ and the chatbot experience around it.